More violence and a rising death toll. The protests continue after Israeli forces killed at least 60 Palestinians and injured thousands. The bloodiest clashes in years have created a diplomatic crisis. The Palestinian Authority has withdrawn its envoy from Washington.
What would your countries do? Would they accept that the Security Council remain paralyzed, doing nothing in the face of these crimes and massacres, which are organized by the cowardly Israeli Occupation Authority, which is hiding in the hills some 1 kilometer away from the civilians in Gaza?
First, they incite people to violence. Then they place as many civilians as possible, including women and children, in the line of fire to maximize civilian casualties. Then they blame Israel, and then they come here to complain to the UN.
And Turkey and Israel expelled each other's ambassadors. Turkish president described the actions of the Israeli forces as genocide and accused the UN of not playing its due role.
In the face of all these events, the United Nations has ended. It has become exhausted and collapsed because the United Nations exists to have justice prevail.
The relocation of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is so controversial because the status of Jerusalem is at the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The city is significant to Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, the 3 major Abrahamic religions. It's built over the site where Christians believe Jesus Christ was crucified and rose from the dead. And it owns Judaism's holiest site, the Western Wall. Muslims believe the city is where their prophet ascended into heaven 14 centuries ago. The shared heritage of the city sometimes sparked tensions between the 3 monotheistic faiths. The dispute marks the worst diplomatic crisis between regional powers Israel and Turkey since Israeli Marines stormed an aid ship to enforce a naval blockade of Gaza in 2010. Many international organizations are calling on all sides to de-escalate the situation.
For more discussion on Israeli-Palestinian tensions, we are joining our Beijing studio He Wenping, professor at the West Africa and Asia Studies in the Institute of Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome, ma'am. In Ankara, we have Selçuk Çolakoglu, who is the director of the Turkish Center for Asia-Pacific Studies and professor of international relations. In Washington, D.C., the U.S., we have Dr. Bülent Ali Reza, who is the director and senior associate of the Turkey Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Welcome to all of you. A lot of things going on right now in the greater Middle East as a result of the moving of the embassy from the U.S. To Jerusalem. Let me ask you, Dr. Ali Reza, about the fact that so many things happening at the same time. Many really wondered, is this going to be the beginning of a long-time escalated conflict?
The short answer is no. The world, including the Arab world and the Islamic world, has unfortunately come to terms with the fact that there's going to be sporadic violence between Israel and the Palestinians. The Arab countries that previously fought Israel in the past, Egypt and Jordan, are at peace with Israel. They have formal peace treaties. Syria is in a state of civil war. The other countries beyond the immediate region, like Saudi Arabia, are more concerned about Iran. So even though what happened is tragic, there's not going to be a war, and it's more likely that there's going to be the kind of conflagration that we should be concerned about involving Israel and Iran because of the Iranian presence in Syria.
Mr. Çolakoglu, what about your judgment? Has the landscape over there, when it comes to security and the relations among all players, been fundamentally changed as a result of the factor of Iran?
Of course, the decision of the removal of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem by the United States is the main cause of today's events. But also the Israeli security forces heavy handling of the protests in Gaza Strip is another cause. But at the end, this is an expected escalation in the region, and also there is a there was also concern in recent weeks for further escalation for the embassy, because of the embassy move and because of the anniversary of the foundation of Israel, and also anniversary of the Palestinian migration from Israeli territory. But now the current situation is much more higher than the expectation, but we can still say that there is no expectation a so-called war or more large-scale clashes in that sense. So this is somewhat usual business in the Middle East and Israeli-Palestinian issue, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, as you said, sir. But, you know, are we going to see, Ms. He, the nature of the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, particularly its impact on the greater Middle East, be diminishing rather than increasing if you look at the overall picture of the greater Middle East? Ms. He.
Yeah, I think that's for sure. Actually, this Palestine-Israel conflict used to be a center of all those conflicts in the Middle East. But through for the past years, this issue has been marginalized. And because all other issues like Syria civil war, like anti-ISIL, all of this has becoming, increasingly important. Plus, recent years, we have seen that Iran nuclear competition with Saudi, and also like Saudi's, closer with Israel, now becoming another main issue in the whole picture. So that's why this marginalized issue, Palestine-Israel conflict, and then because it's marginalized, so that doesn't matter. So that's why I think one of the factors can push President Trump to make this very bold decision, because it's already been marginalized. So doesn't matter if I move another way forward. It's not going to be a agree with those colleagues there. So not going to be a war, but its tensions will be building up.
Tension will be building up and lives will be lost. And unfortunately, not many people are really working on that anymore to change the picture. Therefore, may I ask you, Dr. Ali Reza in Washington, D.C., what exactly, if you think the previous logic of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, of the centerpiece of all the involvement of relations in the Middle East has been changed, then what exactly is it now? What exactly is the nature? Can we pin down it? Dr. Ali Reza.
Well, it's easy to pin down, but very difficult to come up with a prescription to actually get out of the current impasse. The reality is that there is a confrontation between Israel and the Palestinians, but it's worth noting that it's mostly on the Israeli-Gaza border. There are Palestinians living in the West Bank, which is under Israeli occupation, but there have been no major demonstrations in there, and none in Jerusalem, which is at the very center of the crisis. Look, the Trump administration, Trump himself, has been talking about a peace deal that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is in charge of. But the likelihood of any movement towards an Israeli-Palestinian deal is, frankly, slimmer than it's ever been. I think the world has learned to live with this crisis. I agree with the consensus that other issues are much more urgent, including Korea, that we did not mention at the global level. That wasn't the case before. We've had a number of wars in the past because of the Palestinian issue. The reality is that the Palestinian issue is going to continue as an irritant, but not as a major crisis, unfortunately.
But then how shall we see that, Mr. Çalhakoglu, about the nature, the centerpiece of how the logic of the Middle East has been evolving? If there are any solutions that have to be carved out, we better find out what is the centerpiece. To you, what exactly is it? Is it still in the time of transition, Mr. Çalhakoglu?
When we got the Israeli-Palestinian issue, of course, it's very deep-rooted and sometimes frozen, but sometimes hot dispute in the region. But it is also the expectation of solution is almost done under the framework of the Oslo peace process. But in current atmosphere, despite the rising tension in the region and other things, there may be a chance for further negotiations. particularly the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, now are focusing on Iran and Iranian expansion influence in Syria and Lebanon. So then the primary agenda of those three countries are Israel right now. So this common ground will give a chance to peace negotiations between the Israelis and Palestinians, at least to de-escalate of tension, and also to get more support for this push against Iran from the Arab countries. So then the region is full of surprise. So then starting a new fresh negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians will be another one if there is.
But Ms. He, if I could ask that question, I hope I'm not being so-called innocent and naive when I ask that question. What you have explained, all of you, it's not fair, some would believe, to the Palestinians, because they are still suffering as much as they did before, probably even more, because what they consider as unfair, the moving of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem by the United States. And the overall focus of the Middle East has been evolving. Then, are we seeing a fairer picture in the Middle East, or things are getting ever more, in a way, going to the negative direction? Ms. He.
Well, unfortunately, even though the Palestinian people now suffering more and more, but I'm not so optimistic to see any other solution coming up to rescue the people, even living in the Gaza Strait or in the in the Palestinian side. So because there's no authority, no strong backup for Palestinian side. Now, before we are talking about Egypt, this very influential Middle East country, but now they're also closer with Saudi. And also now the Saudi and even with Israel, they are also working together to counter, with the Iran. So all those pictures now is not a favor with Palestinian side. Even though Palestinian side can go to international stage, calling for those sympathy, and also go to other international organizations to becoming a member, in the UNESCO. But all of that is just a diplomatic front.
Right. Those
wins. But in the real ground, in the Middle East area, this Jerusalem issue, but they have no bargaining chips in their hand.
Okay. Dr. Ali Reza, you are living in Washington. You know very well, through different generations of American presidents, whoever is able to do something about the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians is likely to be carved the name onto a monument. But now, I guess things will change. So what would this issue mean to the agenda of an American president, whether it's President Trump, who is quite an outlier, as they say, among all the other presidents, or future presidents to come about this? Dr. Ali Reza.
Well, if we look back, we see Carter making a major effort on this issue and getting Sadat and Begin together. Clinton tried very hard. Obama tried very hard. But by the end of his term, it's significant that Obama had pretty much given up on the idea of Middle East peace. As I said, Trump talks about a peace deal that is achievable, but I don't think that's his focus. He realizes that this is not going to happen. He's drawn closer to Israel, frankly, than any American president. He's done by moving the embassy to Jerusalem what previous presidents promised before they were elected, but never did. And when we look at the team that he's put together, dealing with the Israeli-Palestinian issue, Kushner, the ambassador who's just moved to Jerusalem, Friedman, and Greenblatt, who's the negotiator. These are all very close to Netanyahu and the Israeli establishment, and the Palestinians have very little confidence in them. So I just don't think that this particular American president, this particular administration, is going to take any major steps towards a settlement, and they're going to focus on other aspects of the overall Middle Eastern equation, namely Iran.
Okay. Before we go, 30 seconds left for also Mr. Çalhakoglu. What would you say, sir, this mean for the other countries, U.S. attitude now, and also how the major conflict in the Middle East has been evolving? What would that mean for the other major powers in the region? Very briefly from you.
When we regard the Palestinian issue or Palestinian declaration of statehood in general, the United States is the only country have a pressure or power capacity over Israel. So without strong American involvement, finding a solution for the Israeli-Palestinian issue and the declaration of the Palestinian state is very difficult. And also interestingly, the other regional countries like Turkey, Iran and Saudi Arabia have no strong leverages on that to force Israel to get some action to the settlement of the Palestinian issue. And very interesting also, Russia has a more neutral position when we look at the Israeli-Iran rift over Syria. So it is very difficult that without American involvement, there is a strong involvement, there will be a settlement and further progress for Middle East issues in general.
We are running out of time. Thank you so much, He Wenping, Shalkuk Shalakoglu, and also Dr. Bülent Ali Reza. Thank you so much for being with us.